Hi, my name's Matt Colville. I am a writer and a game designer, and Dune has been a part of my life since I was 15, which was 400 years ago. At the time, this book was already 20 years old, but it was still required reading for all nerds. In fact, when a kid in high school saw me reading this, he said, "Man, I thought everybody had already read that book." In other words, I was a noob for not having read it yet, and I was 15. It's a book set on a desert planet in the far future of a galactic empire. It's science fiction, but it's about a feudal society with dukes and barons who fight with swords. So there's a lot of really cool action and dueling, but I think most people remember Dune for the incredible scope of the writing. The author, Frank Herbert, presents not only a really cool story, but a complex, well-thought-out future society and technology. It's about sociology and politics and the way religion can be a tool to affect change. But it's also about ecology, about humans and their relationship to a planet. It's the first and one of the only novels ever that presents a planet's ecology as a complex system that affects the cultures of the people that live on that planet and is affected by the people who live on that planet. And there's just a lot of really cool science fictional ideas in it. It's about what happens to a society that becomes dependent on a single resource. It has a lot of great dialogue in it, very quotable, though it's not very relatable. The people in it don't talk like normal people. It's a melodrama, heightened reality. And there's a lot of really good philosophy in it. It is a great work, broad and deep in subject and scope. There have been several attempts to get this book made into a movie. Some failed. Some, well, they produced a movie, but it's hard to say it was a success. And now we're going to get another one by Denis Villeneuve, the same dude who directed the Blade Runner sequel that flopped, and Arrival, which was brilliant and one of the best science fiction movies of the last 10 years, and Sicario, which I think is even better and probably my favorite movie of his. Because there's a new movie coming out, and because I love Dune and read it once a year for like 15 years, and I went on to be a designer on the Dune collectible card game and the original role-playing game, I thought now would be a good time to make a Dune video. But the things I want to talk about are too many to pack into one video, so this is the first Dune video, and I want to talk about something that I think is the most important event in the novels. It is the inciting incident that kicks off everything that happens in this book. And even though it is described in this book, I think most of the people who read it miss it. And I think it's critical to understanding why everything in Dune happens the way it does. In fact, if I were directing Dune, I would open with a prologue, and it would be this. A scientist who lives on Dune is driving through one of Dune's few cities, and he sees from his car some Harkonnens beating up a young Fremen. Now, these are all humans. It's a far future galactic empire, but there are no aliens. The Harkonnens run this desert planet, but they are not from here. They are part of the same feudal system as our scientist. But they are famously cruel and evil in a very operatic Shakespearean way, and our scientist works for the emperor. He's more noble and chivalrous, and because he's a scientist, he's also just a lot more naive about the way the world works. The Fremen are the Arab-descended nomadic natives of this desert planet, and no one takes them seriously. They're just these savages that eke out a living in the desert. The Harkonnen make sport of them, hunt them like animals. Our scientist friend sees these Harkonnens being cruel to a Fremen youth, and because he takes feudalism very seriously, he sees this as an outrage. This is not how nobles behave. He leaps out of his car, draws a sword, and wades into the Harkonnens, killing several of them. He's using a sword because, even though this is the far future and there are laser pistols and projectile weapons, most nobles wear a personal shield, a force field that works in proportion with the kinetic energy of whatever hits it. So a bullet, lots of kinetic energy, shield works really well, and the bullet bounces off. A sword, very little kinetic energy, slips right through the shield. Frank Herbert wasn't the first dude to think of this. Lots of pulp sci-fi in the 1930s and 40s had this same idea, basically just an excuse to have science fiction but with sword fights. But by 1965, when Dune came out, no one was reading those old short stories, so Frank Herbert gets the credit for it. Before he can finish off the last Harkonnen, our scientist notices the Fremen youth has a knife, a very unusual knife. He's never seen one like it before. It has a milky white blade. It looks almost organic. As the battle ends, the young Fremen's adult friends show up, and they're confused. In their experience, the world is divided into Fremen and Harkonnens. This dude isn't a Fremen, he's wearing a uniform like the Harkonnens, but it's a different kind of uniform, and the kid explains this guy attacked the Harkonnens and saved his life. Fremen don't know what to do with this noble scientist guy, so they grab him and take him back to their base. Let the tribe elders decide what to do. Next scene, we're in the deep desert, in a complex of caves cut into the rock of a mountain range. This is where the Fremen brought our scientist friend, and the tribe's elders are debating what to do with the dude. They're treating him as a guest, so he's free to wander around, and he attracts an entourage of Fremen children, like junior high school kids. And now, he's got nothing else to do. He's lecturing these kids. He has no idea the tribe elders are debating whether to kill him. He's sort of holding court, giving a lecture to these kids on his specialization, which is ecology. He's an ecologist, which they call a planetologist, and his specialty is Dune. He's the Emperor's man on Dune, and even though no one else takes his job seriously, he takes it seriously. He has learned a lot about this planet. He probably knows more about the ecology of this planet than anyone. He knows more than the Harkonnens. They don't care about this planet. It's not their homeworld. It's just a way for them to get rich. He knows more than the Fremen because they're too busy surviving to do any science. This is one of the first things that impresses these kids. He refers to Dune as his planet, and he means it. He loves this planet. While he lectures these kids on the ecology of the planet they live on, the elders watch and they're kind of blown away at how oblivious this dude is. He's like a child. He doesn't realize how much danger he's in, or he's just incredibly brave. Some of the Fremen are like, well, whatever else is true, this dude isn't a Fremen, so he dies. Other Fremen say, hang on, he killed a bunch of Harkonnens. He's a good guy. Well, we've all killed Harkonnens. That doesn't mean anything. He saved one of us. We owe him a water debt. Other Fremen say, no, those rules are for us, not these scheming evil offworlders. Finally, one Fremen says, he's seen a crysknife, he dies. A crysknife is a knife made from a tooth of one of the sandworms of Dune, one of these massive 400-meter-long worms that burrow in the sand, and which the Fremen worship as basically a god. That's the knife the kid he was defending had. A crysknife is a weapon and a holy artifact, and that tells you a lot about these people. No outworlder is allowed to see a crysknife and live. End of story. Whatever else this dude is, he's an offworlder and he's seen a crysknife, he dies. One of the Fremen says, okay, I'll do it, and he leaves the meeting to go kill our planetologist. Meanwhile, the planetologist is teaching these kids some extraordinary things, and they are mesmerized. They have never seen anyone like this dude before, and he is blowing their minds. He talks about how Dune once had oceans and rivers of liquid water and rain. These kids have no idea what these words mean. There is no rain on Arrakis. No open flowing water anywhere. Everything these people do, everything, is about staying alive on this planet. So he explains rain and rivers and oceans, and the kids are fascinated. This is like a fairy tale, except this guy is saying it's real. He explains he's done a bunch of research. Nobody back in the Imperium pays any attention to his reports, but he has proven if you can get just 3% of the existing desert-adapted plant life involved in the water cycle, you get a self-sustaining feedback loop which will grow all on its own, and eventually you could change the face of Arrakis. These kids, these are like 7th graders, they don't know any better. This dude says it, they believe it. They don't even really know what these numbers mean. He's just saying if we wanted to, we could make this planet a paradise. We could walk out into the open without a still suit. Water would fall from the sky. Meanwhile, the assassin from the Fremen elders has shown up, and he's got a knife, and he's snuck up on the planetologist, and he's about to plunge the knife into the guy's back, but he sees these kids and how they're looking at this dude like he's a prophet. And the Fremen assassin listens to what the guy is saying, and he starts to realize something incredible is happening here. He hears the dude talking about making his planet a paradise, and he seems to know how to do it. And he watches as the children just absorb it all. And suddenly he realizes this isn't a teacher and his class. This man is a prophet, and these children are his first followers. It is clear to this Fremen the planetologist was sent by God, and he is in the presence of a miracle. How long would this take? The kids ask. They can see the assassin standing behind the guy, but they don't care. He's unimportant. This conversation, that's what's important. The planetologist thinks and says, no, not long. Not long at all, actually, only about 300 years. The kids all nod, like, okay, we don't know what that means, but you don't seem to think that's a long time, so we don't think it's a long time. Then the planetologist notices the assassin standing behind him. He turns and sees this guy just standing there in awe. And the planetologist, unaware he's in danger, says in this incredibly imperial casual voice, remove yourself. Like, hey, you're interrupting my lecture. Remove yourself. Filled with the sense of the importance of the moment, of his role in the miracle, the assassin takes the dagger and plunges it into his own belly, eviscerating himself. He took the words, remove yourself, as a religious instruction. And in that moment, in a heartbeat, in an instant, every Fremen in those caves, the children who watched it all and will now never forget it, the adults who think they basically just saw a miracle happen in front of them, all of these Fremen, and pretty soon every Fremen on the planet, undergo a religious conversion. When the Planetologist met them, they were religious zealots. Their religion was a mishmash of Zen Buddhism, Sunni mysticism, and worship of the giant sandworms. But this Planetologist converts them all in one generation from being zealots of religion to being zealots of ecology. They are now a people infected with a purpose. When they were just trying to survive, they weren't a threat to anyone. But now they have a holy cause. They are going to follow this Planetologist and eventually his son. They will make him an honorary Fremen, and his native-born son will become the leader of all the tribes. And when a young man, another off-worlder, arrives and promises that he will make their dream his dream, these desert-dwelling people do something they never would have done if they had remained zealots of religion. They follow this young man. They were once content to survive on this planet, killed for sport by the Harkonnens, but now they are infected with terrible purpose, and they will follow him into battle against the Harkonnens and, eventually, against the entire universe. They follow him because their religion predicted his arrival with an alarming degree of accuracy. The Fremen don't know it, but their society was subtly manipulated hundreds of years ago so that when the hero of our story arrives, the Fremen religion was waiting for him. And how that happened is the subject of the next Dune video, The Missionaries. These events are described, I embellished them quite a bit, but these events are described in the appendices to Dune, which I suspect a lot of readers skip. But understanding what happened a generation before the events of the book is, I think, critical to understanding the plot of the novel. Frank Herbert couldn't figure out a way to fit it into his story, but he knew it was important, so he stuck it in the back of the book. We got 2 more videos after this just talking about the setup, the unique confluence of events that make the plot of the book possible. Stay tuned for part 2.